External Gotham Square on newsstand.
The news vendor is applauding and singing along like everyone else when a second newspaper van rumbles past.
Hey! No! I already got her!
He spots two masked men in the doorway of the van wearing red berets and bat shirts. They shove a body out of the door. The mutilated corpse of Harrison Provost lands on the sidewalk with a thud right beside the newspapers which read, Batman murder spree baffles police.
External Gotham Square on van moving.
The news vendor chases after the van, but it's already rounded a corner and is cruising along the periphery of Gotham Square. The crowd is still singing merrily, unaware of its presence, until the back doors fly open and a swarm of rabid, chattering bats screech out in the midst of the crowd.
External Gotham Square on crowd at tree.
The carolers break into mass hysteria as the hideous bats swoop from above, clawing at their heads and shoulders. Orchestra members drop their instruments and stagger off the band platform, falling into the branches of the giant Christmas tree.
External Gotham Square on sidewalks.
Christmas shoppers are teeming in and out of nearby stores. They drop their shopping bags and race about in utter chaos as the bats attack. Women scream, children scream, men scream too. A man staggers backwards through a glass storefront and lands on his butt in a window display, a big mechanical Santa Claus on his North Pole throne, chuckling merrily at the pre-recorded voice, ho, ho, ho. The man struggles wildly as the bats converge on him.
Internal department store that moment.
Horrified shoppers scatter through the aisles as bats pour through a broken window. Women lined up for a free makeover squeal in panic as bats arrive to rearrange their hairdo.
External rooftop on Batman.
He stares down, stunned at the pandemonium raging below. He glances across the street and sees the tiny silhouette of a woman standing atop a cast iron globe structure, laughing at the chaos, taunting him.
External streets overhead angle that moment.
A few blocks away from Gotham Square, sirens howl. There's a steady stream of cop cars speeding towards the site of the disturbance. One vehicle is moving in the opposite direction, against traffic. A newspaper delivery van.
External globe building rooftop a moment later.
Batman touches down on the roof and stares in horror at the corpses strewn across the helipad. A dying guard raises a shaky hand. Batman crouches beside him. A gurgle comes up from his throat and a bubble of blood swells on his lips. All at once he hears a woman's voice from the shadows of the globe's sculpture.
Some people just can't take discipline. Go ahead. Finish 'em off.
His head jerks up. He can't see anything. A sudden whooshing noise, and now the voice is coming from the other side of the roof.
You might as well. You're going to get blamed for it anyway.
He stands. He gets a quick glimpse of a feline shadow springing past a skylight. She's jumping all around the roof, clinging to exposed pipes and fixtures. He reaches for a batarang.
Oh, come on, Angel. You know you want to. Besides, I want to see how you do it.
Who are you?
He's barely gotten it out when she slams into him from behind, feet first, knocking him onto the rooftop. He tries to get up, but she comes at him with a couple of cartwheeling kicks, knocking him back into the cornice. He ducks right just as a sharp spiked heel strikes an exposed brick a mere 3 inches from his throat. He catches her leg, upends her, but she somersaults away and lands on her feet. Cats always do.
My, aren't we frisky tonight?
He flings the batarang. It clangs into a big neon sign as she springs up into the darkness, out of reach. Glass tubing shatters and sparks fly as she calls down from the shadows.
I should tell you, I've got 9 lives to play with, and you've only got 1.
He turns, she drops directly onto him and locked in a death grip. They stagger backwards across the roof, directly towards the helicopter. The huge rotor blades are still turning. Batman ducks instinctively and the Catwoman breaks free, falling backward onto the roof. It's a strategic move. When he rushes at her, she braces herself against the ground and kicks upward with startling force. This time, the spiked heel connects with lifting Batman off his feet, knocking him backward into the tail of the helicopter. He slumps there, stunned, and before he knows it, she's on him. She grabs his throat with one hand and clamps the other around his crotch. He tries to break her grip, but she's just as strong as he is, and she's lifting him, forcing him upward, towards the rear stabilizing rotor on the tail of the helicopter. The rear rotor blades whine like a buzzsaw as his head rises closer. At the last possible instant, he grabs a handful of her hair, yanks it as hard as he can. With a yowl, she releases him. They tumble onto the roof, and she dives on top of her. Talons click into place. He sees them poised directly above his eyes, but manages to slam an elbow under her chin before she can strike. Now they're disentangled, they get up groggily and circle each other. Someone is banging on the metal door that leads to the roof, trying to break it down. Batman turns for an instant, a sudden crack, and he finds himself all wrapped up in Catwoman's cat-o'-nine tails, which is also outfitted with a taser. She sends a paralyzing electric charge through his body. As he collapses to the roof in a jittering heap, the banging on the door is louder.
Did I tell you I invited company? Keep him busy, Angel. I've got a scat.
She kneels down and plants a big wet kiss on his twitching face. Then she scurries to the edge of the roof, disappearing just as the door gives way and an armed SWAT team comes crashing out onto the roof. Just coming around, Batman tries to roll out of sight, but the cops are swarming the place. They spot the bodies on the tar and gravel, see Batman scuttling for cover, and draw the obvious conclusion. Pulling guns, they open fire. Bullets ricochet off the big metal globe. Batman, as is customary in these situations, shoots a grappling hook at the roof to the next building, over which is a couple of stories taller than the globe, and reels himself upward along the sidewall. The SWAT cops score a couple of dead hits, which set him swinging like a pendulum, but his body armor holds, and he clings on the line long enough to reach the roof.
Cut to internal newspaper van moving that moment night.
Frick and Frack, still in their Order of the Bat garb, are in the front seats. The Penguin is leaning out the side door. Someone's obviously tipped the cops about the source of all the ruckus, because a pair of police cars are on their tail and gaining fast. Still hanging in the doorway, the Penguin raises his umbrella, peers down its length like a rifle sight, and pulls the trigger.
Angle on squad car moving that moment.
A sonic dart, one of the Penguin's bird magnets, lodges itself in the grill of the foremost police car.
Internal squad car moving that moment.
The cops in the car react in astonishment as pigeons begin hurling themselves at the windshields. A dozen kamikaze birds bounce off in rapid succession. Cracks begin to spread across the glass. The cops can't see where they're driving. The car swerves wildly, and the pigeons keep coming, covering the windshield, totally obscuring the streets from view.
External streets on squad cars that moment.
The first car, completely covered in birds, smacks into a lamppost and skids. The second car crashes into it, and the pigeons continue to pour down from the heavens, swarming onto the immobilized squad cars.
Internal newspaper van moving that moment.
The Penguin grins with delight as the van speeds off unmolested.
Look at that, boys. They do flock together.
Cut to external Gotham Square that moment night.
Ambulances are pouring into the square as the bat attack continues. Cops are firing their guns blindly into the skies as they try to evacuate the citizenry. Paramedics drop the stretcher they're carrying when the bats swoop down on their heads.
External rooftops night.
Batman is still pursuing the Catwoman, who's perched one roof over in a squat, wiggling a finger for him to follow. The roofs are icy and treacherous, but he matches her step for step, leap for leap, as she vaults from one building to the next, leading him on. Finally, she reaches the edge of a building on the corner of a block. There's no place to go but down. She squats on the ledge and smiles, beckoning to him.
Where have you been all my life?
He edges closer. Suddenly, she does a backflip, directly off the edge of the roof. Batman hears glass shattering. He hesitates a second, moves closer to the edge of the roof, peers over the icy cornice.
Batman's POV that moment.
Staring down, he sees a narrow ledge, running around the facade of the building, some 10 or 12 feet below. The window of the corner apartment has been smashed. The curtains are flapping in the chill wind.
External roof on Batman a moment later night.
She's obviously making her getaway through the apartment. Batman climbs up on the slippery cornice and prepares to drop down on the ledge below cautiously, because it's a long way down. A sudden crack. The Catwoman hasn't entered the apartment. Instead, she followed the ledge around the corner of the building, silently doubling back onto the roof behind Batman. He turns just as her whip wraps itself around his left leg. She gives it a sharp tug, his feet skid on the ice, and he topples over the edge of the roof.
External facade of building on Batman.
He plunges downward for the briefest of seconds, jerks up short, slamming into the wall of the building. The whip has coiled itself around his leg, and for now, it's holding tight. He's dangling upside down, bat-like. He bounces away from the wall, he spins in midair as one loop of the whip unravels, dropping him another foot or so. He manages to brace his left foot against the wall. It's a massive strain, but he's momentarily safe if he can keep from moving. The alternative is a 12-story drop straight down to the pavement.
External roof on Catwoman that moment.
She's wrapped the handle end of the whip around an exposed pipe on the roof, anchoring Batman in place. With a Cheshire Cat grin, she removes the Raven from her knapsack and holds it on the edge of the cornice.
External facade that moment.
Batman, hanging immobile, craning his neck, he can just see the Raven statuette on the ledge above him bouncing slightly and apparently talking to him.
Nevermore. Nevermore.
Now the Catwoman appears beside it, elbows on the cornice, chin popped up by folded hands like a chatty girl at a fern bar.
Cute, huh? I think it'll look nice over the fireplace. Maybe you can drop by and see it sometime. I hope you won't think I'm too aggressive or anything, but I find you very attractive.
She toys aimlessly with the whipcord, batting it like a cat with a piece of yarn. Batman grimaces. She speaks in a low, soothing, seductive tone, almost a purr. Behind a bondage mask, she bats her eyelashes.
It's just so hard to meet interesting men these days. Don't you think so? I have trouble with relationships. Men find me intimidating, kind of predatory, you know? Really, I'm not. Really, I'm just playful.
Batman huffs and puffs, trying to bend at the waist so he can grab hold of the whip. She frowns and yanks on it. His foot flies free from the wall and another loop of the whip uncoils before he can stabilize himself.
Don't laugh. I'm trying to open up to you.
Angrily, she holds a steel claw to the whip, ready to cut him loose.
Angle on Batman.
He's palmed the grappling hook launcher from his belt, holding it close to his body, out of view. He works it around into firing position. He'll shoot it right through her if he has to.
I always seem to fall for the wrong guys. You know, most men are rats.
Angle on Catwoman.
She withdraws her hand from the whip, reverts to her philosophical mode.
Mice, really. It's disgusting. They beg you to walk all over them, and then they whine when you do it. Once you've had your fun, there's not much you can do but kill them. But you seem different. I mean, you obviously understand about dressing up. That saves a lot of explaining. I think people should indulge their fantasies. Don't you?
Batman is sweating profusely. He can't hold his position much longer, and the Catwoman is dragging this insane flirtation out endlessly.
So I think I'll let you live. Cute boys like you are hard to find. Bye, Angel. I'll be thinking about you. Bye, Angel. I'll be thinking about you.
And just like that, she vanishes, moving silently off with her raven, leaving Batman to dangle. He hangs there a moment, tries to twist himself around without moving his foot. He braces one hand against the wall with the other. He lifts his grappling gun and fires. The hook snags somewhere on the roof. Batman yanks the line taut and is laboring, trying to pull himself erect when the Catwoman reappears over the edge of the cornice.
Gee, I'm so fickle.
A quick swipe of her steel talons and the whipcord is neatly severed. Batman's foot slips out from under him, but he's still got hold of the grappling gun. He drops 8 or 10 feet.
External roof on Catwoman.
Watching with amusement as Batman's weight causes the hook to dislodge. It skitters across the gravel surface on the roof and catches at the last instant on the edge of the cornice, which promptly crumbles and gives way. Fascinated, the Catwoman leaves over the edge of the roof and peers down.
Angle on Batman as he falls.
He flails wildly, tangled in his cape, as the ground rushes up towards him. He gets a last-ditch inspiration, finds the gas cylinder on his belt and hits the switch. The rods in his cape begin to inflate. 6 stories up, his bat wings spring erect, slowing his plunge. 5 stories up, an updraft hits him and he suddenly inverts. 4 stories up, he rights himself. 3 stories up, he goes in a downward spiral out of control, gliding in great effect, wide arcs over the street, and moments later there are no stories left. With an ugly crunch, he smacks into the slush-covered pavement and bounces. He skids some 20 feet to a halt right in the middle of the busy intersection.
External intersection that moment night.
A delivery truck hits his brakes and screeches to a stop. 2 feet away from Batman's head. Pedestrians are already gawking and pointing as the driver climbs out and peers down at the inert, caped figure lying face down in the street.
What the hell is this?
Cars are backed up due to the panic in Gotham Square a few blocks over. Horns are honking, a traffic cop marches over.
Alright, what's the problem here? Jesus.
He tries to clear the crowd away. A fully fledged gridlock is forming around the prostrate Batman. The cop blows his whistle, tries to maintain order as 2 uniformed patrolmen rush up to join him. They manage to roll the unconscious Batman over on his back. The assembled cops stare down at the mask. Still waxy, they finger the guns in their holsters. Good God! Cowan, get to the car! Radio the commissioner! By now there must be 200 people in the intersection, all surging forward to get a look. More cops are arriving to beat them back.
Is he dead? What do we do?
The mask! Get the mask off! They hunker down over Batman. One of them tugs at his mask, but the helmet-like cowl doesn't want to give way. He feels around.
There's some kind of seam here on the neck.
The patrolman nods okay, and the cop tugs at a Velcro-like fastening under the Batman's chin. The instant it comes open, a burst of fine green mist spews forth from the concealed jets in the gold and black bat emblem, and the cops reel backward, shrieking, gasping for breath, and clawing at their eyes. Booby trap! They must have been maced. One of the onlooking cops steps back in horror and confusion. On impulse, he draws his gun and fires twice at Batman. The body jerks and the bullets ricochet off.
Don't shoot, you idiot! The crowd.
Before he can finish, a black boot kicks the gun out of the onlooking cop's hand. Batman is back among the living. Sirens blare as he spins and rolls into a crouch, lashing out with his elbows and knees, driving cops back. Fuck the crowd. 2 more cops pull their guns and open fire in absolute panic. Batman slams backwards into a delivery truck and crumbles to the ground. As he falls, he grabs a couple of smoke capsules from his belt and flings them to the pavement. Seconds later, a thick cloud of black smoke is spreading through the intersection. Batman emerges into the midst of the crowd, weaving in and out amongst the stalled vehicles.
External intersection, another angle night.
A mounted cop rides up to the outer fringe of the traffic jam, drawn by all the confusion. He rears the horse back, turns it in a circle, blows his piercing whistle as he tries to reroute the oncoming cars. Suddenly, a wire wraps itself around his chest and arms. He looks down, he sees a batarang in the instant before a sudden jerk pulls him cleanly off his mount. Batman climbs up on the hood of the nearest car, vaults over to the next, and the next, then hops onto the saddle of the mounted cop's waiting horse. He digs in his heels, maneuvering through traffic.
External police car, a moment later night.
Lieutenant Eddie Bullock and another plainclothesman are a few blocks off trying to get through the jam. Their siren is on, but the cars blocking their path have no room to pull over. Bullock grabs the radio mic.
Hell of a mess up here, Commissioner. We'll have to go in on foot.
As they wait for a response, they see a horse charging past in the opposite direction. On the back of the horse is Batman. Gaping, Bullock nudges his partner, who throws the car immediately into reverse. As they watch, Batman kicks the horse's flanks and turns right into Gotham Park.
Internal Gotham Park, a moment later night.
2 Red Berets, members of the Order of the Bat, are on night patrol, strolling down a rambling path near the entrance of the park.
This is whack, man. Nothing ever happens around here anymore.
The other Red Beret lets out a whoop of fear and yanks his partner out of the way. They tumble into a snowdrift as Batman's horse vaults over a stone wall of the park and gallops past, nearly trampling them in the process. By now, squad cars are roaring into the park.
Internal park, another section, a moment later.
Sirens blare and red lights flash in the distance as the cop cars spread out amongst the winding roads that run through the park. Batman reins the horse in suddenly as the black and white whips past on the access road just ahead of him, no more than 20 yards away. He turns the horse in a circle, more red lights appear in the distance. Another contingent of the squad cars have just entered the opposite side of the park. It's going to be tough getting out of here. Then, his eyes falls on the statue of his great-grandfather, General Wayne, 2 Waynes on horseback, not 20 feet apart. He thinks back to his earlier conversation with Vicky and gets an inspiration. He rides past General Wayne to the stone bridge which spans a little frozen creek. There he finds the drainage tunnel Vicky described, obscured by a wire mesh grate. This must be where the boy vigilante holds up. He dismounts, ties his cape to the pommel on the horse's saddle, and sends it off with a slap. He pries the grate loose and crawls inside.
Internal drainage tunnel, that moment.
A dank but cozy hideout. Warm steam hisses from the grate on the floor. Rumbling sounds fill the little chamber as a subway train passes directly underneath. A little farther back, there's an access shaft, with a Jacob's ladder leading to the train tracks below. Poking around, he finds a couple of cardboard boxes, the boy vigilante's stash. The first contains tins of food, plus various odds and ends. The second's more in line with what he needs. It's full of old clothing. A train rumbles past underneath. Bruce removes his cowl and sets about putting together a civilian disguise that will get him out of the park. A wool hat, a long moth-eaten topcoat, perfect. As he's pulling them out of the box, he spies something extremely odd. It's a costume, a spangled red and green gymnast outfit, with a little yellow cape, neatly folded and in pristine condition. He removes it carefully from the box and holds it up in front of him. Stitched on the vest is a single initial, R, in a black circle. He stares at the whole mystifying ensemble in complete befuddlement. The roar of the train subsides and he hears a scuffling noise. Someone's in the tunnel with him. He lowers the costume abruptly, revealing Dick, the boy vigilante, who's crouched in front of him not 3 feet away. The kid's just crawled up through the access shaft and he's not at all happy to see an intruder messing with his stuff.
It's mine!
He lunges furiously at Bruce. The 2 of them tumble back into the grate at the tunnel entrance, knocking it loose.
External park, mouth of tunnel, that moment night.
A police car streaks past on the bridge, overhead mere seconds before Bruce and Dick roll out into the snow. Still grappling, Bruce flings the kid into the bridge abutment. Dick lands hard. When he looks up, his eyes widen and a weird crooked smile comes to his face. Out here in the moonlight, he can see his opponent. The body armor, the gold and black emblem on the breastplate, and above it all, the face of Bruce Wayne exposed to view. As the sirens howl nearby, Bruce flattens himself against the bridge. Like it or not, his fate rests entirely in the strange little boy's hands. The kid sizes up the situation immediately. He nods his head up and down, Then he takes off his own ratty coat and throws it to Bruce. Bruce is in no position to look a gift horse in the mouth. He pulls on the coat, gives Dick a nod of acknowledgement, and starts to move off.
No. Wait!
Bruce turns, uncertainly. Dick throws him his woolen ski cap. The kid giggles oddly, uncontrollably. Then he sprints off into the woods, dancing and leaping. As he disappears from view, he lets out a shrill, piercing, almost feral shriek, which is obviously intended to divert the cops. Bruce makes haste in the opposite direction.
External park another section a moment later.
Bruce's horse gallops through the trees, the black back cape still attached to its saddle and billowing behind it.
Internal squad car moving that moment night.
2 cops scanning the park. The caped horse charges past in front of them and is momentarily silhouetted by the headlights. From a distance, it looks like Batman is still in the saddle. The cop at the wheel makes a sudden turn. A moment later, he slams on the brakes. A man has just stepped out onto the road, directly in the squad car's path. A hunched figure in an old coat and a woolen ski cap, obviously one of the homeless. A cop leans on the horn and shouts out of the window, "Dumb son of a bitch!" The man, Bruce, steps back out of the squad car's path. The cops take off in pursuit of the riderless horse.
Cut to internal Wayne Manor kitchen dawn.
A doctor's bag rests on the kitchen table. Alfred, in Roman slippers, rummages inside it and comes up with an ace bandage.
Commissioner Gordon called. He wants to install a full contingent of police guards here at the manor in round-the-clock shifts to protect you from Batman.
Bruce is sitting erect in a straight-back chair. His shirt is open and he's holding his arms aloft while Alfred wraps a full roll of adhesive tape around his battered ribs.
Great. What did you tell him?
I told him that since you were Batman, you would require no protection from Batman.
Bruce makes a face. How droll. Alfred tears off the tape with a brisk yank and Bruce lets out an involuntary yelp of pain.
Ah! Jesus, Alfred!
In future, sir, I strongly advise against trying to fly off 20-story buildings.
It's just a few bruises.
One bruise, sir, which covers your entire body.
Bruce gets up stiffly and buttons his shirt in a ginger fashion, while Alfred packs his first aid gear in the doctor's bag.
I'm getting too old for this line of work. Cops placed me at the scene of the crime. That weird kid of Vicky's saw my face.
I shouldn't worry over much. I doubt the two of you move in the same circles.
And I got the living shit knocked out of me by a woman.
Sir, such outmoded sexist attitudes are quite unbecoming.
Internal upstairs bedroom day.
In a lavishly appointed guest bedroom on Gotham's Upper East Side, or equivalent thereof, we find a pair of plainclothes cops settled in for a stakeout. Rumpled topcoats thrown across antique chairs, French fry bags and greasy burger wrappings littering the carpet, high-powered rifles propped against one wall. They peer through the Venetian blinds at an elegant old brownstone across the street.
His POV roof of brownstone that moment.
A uniformed cop, also carrying a walkie-talkie, is keeping watch on the roof of the brownstone. He signals all clear to his counterpart watching from the house opposite.
Internal unmarked car that moment.
2 more plainclothesmen are parked at the end of the block, munching on donuts and watching the same brownstone. They spot a postman lugging his sack up the tree-lined street on his way to the brownstone. One of the plainclothesmen picks up his radio mic. "Mailman's coming."
External brownstone a minute later.
The postman marches up the front steps of the brownstone, sorting through letters and packages. He hasn't even rung the bell when the door is opened by another cop, who snatches the mail delivery from his hands and then slams the door in his face.
Internal brownstone that moment.
More cops, at least half a dozen, are milling around inside, unshaven, ties loosened, shirt sleeves rolled up. They're in it for the long haul. The first cop gives a handful of letters to a couple of colleagues and then hands over a parcel, wrapped in brown paper, to a pair of bomb disposal experts. They carry it gingerly into the kitchen. Into the midst of a bustling activity strides Commissioner Gordon.
Anything suspicious?
In the parlour, where all the shades are drawn, 2 cops are examining each letter in turn, holding them up to a light bulb, creasing them before carefully slitting them open. "Nothing yet. Christmas cards and bills." He anxiously watches their progress. A voice calls from the kitchen.
"Commissioner!"
Internal kitchen a moment later.
Gordon enters. The bomb disposal boys have their equipment scattered all over the kitchen table. They've slit the brown paper wrapping of the package, exposing a round, decorative tin.
"It's a fruitcake."
He lifts the lid for Gordon to have a look.
Have it analyzed.
Internal brownstone entry hall that moment.
A bleary-eyed Elliot Tiptree marches down the stairs carrying a pair of oversized suitcases. His wife and 2 kids are behind him, all bundled up, preparing to embark on an extended vacation.
Mrs. Tiptree? The car's here.
Tiptree, fighting back tears, embraces his wife for a long wordless moment. Their little girl, age 6, tugs at Mummy's sleeve.
I don't want to go to Grandma's. I want to stay here with Daddy.
She's got a nice tree just like ours, honey. Dad'll be up just as soon as he can.
She's old. She doesn't even have cable. What about our present?
He gestures towards the gifts piled high around the tree in the parlour.
Don't worry, I'll bring 'em up with me. We'll open 'em when I get there.
Tiptree forces a smile for the kids. He clutches his wife's hand.
Sorry, folks. But we'd better move along.
Kids, tell your daddy goodbye.
Tearful hugs all round. Then a cadre of uniformed cop escort Mrs. Tiptree and the kids to the door. Tiptree pulls Gordon aside.
They'll be safe, won't they?
As safe as we can make him. It would help if you could give us some small hint what this is all about.
I told you,
Tiptree shrugs helplessly and stares at his shoes. Gordon is convinced he's holding something back.
You have no idea what was in that box that Provis had delivered from the bank.
Tiptree shakes his head wearily. Gordon glowers as he turns to go.
Alright, Mr. Tiptree. Merry Christmas.
Gordon exits. Tiptree wanders listlessly into the living room, pulls back the drapes and watches as his wife and kids ride off in the convoy of police cars. One of the cops tries to pull him away from the window, but he refuses to move until a phone rings. Everyone jumps at once. A technician hits a switch on the loudspeaker and tape recorder assembly, then gestures for Tiptree to pick up the receiver.
Hello?
Mr. Tiptree, Andy here. Listen, we've got a chance to grab a good-sized block. Atlantic Teledyne at 26 and at 8.
The cops heave sighs and turn off the tracing equipment.
Not today, Andy. Let's talk after New Year's.
Tiptree hangs up and starts to bawl right there in the middle of the room. The cops turn away in sympathetic embarrassment as he goes to the corner wet bar and pours himself a good, stiff jolt.
Internal Tiptree's bedroom day.
Wallowing in despair, Tiptree sits at an antique secretary composing a letter. He takes a long pull on a glass of scotch, signs his name, and inserts the letter into an envelope. He opens the desk drawer and takes a long look at the .38 automatic stashed inside, then finds a stamp and affixes it to the envelope. He addresses it to Bruce Wayne. A moment later, he hears a noise at the window. Tink, tink, tink. He peers through the blinds and sees a carrier pigeon on the ledge outside, pecking at the glass, asking to come in. He raises the window and the pigeon hops fearlessly inside onto the sill. The bird, well trained, struggles only slightly as he unties a tiny capsule from its leg and removes the folded note. Scrawled across it as a handwritten message. If police see this, your family is dead. He opens the note and begins to read as the pigeon takes wing. Bruce is at his desk examining the morning editions. A banner headline shrieks, Batman sought in publisher's murder. Bat attacks panics Gotham Square. J. Harrison Provost, 41, leaves distinguished legacy. He hears a visitor arriving at the entry hall. He gets up.
Internal entry hall that moment day.
Bruce ambles out and sees Selina, who has just arrived, doing her patented thing on Alfred.
English accents are so stimulating. You have the most beautiful silver hair.
Alfred stammers as he reaches up to stroke his hair. He's about to break into a sweat. He's eminently relieved when she turns and sees
Bruce.
Selina, what are you doing here?
Alfred affects a look of grandmotherly outrage as Selina sinks over and takes Bruce by the arm. She's on him like a barnacle.
I wanted to see your things, remember? And I got tired of waiting for you to call me back. He's adorable. How long have you had him?
Internal hallway a moment later day.
Bruce leads Selina down a hallway to the armory. He glances back over his shoulder and sees Alfred peering snoopily around the corner.
You heard about Harry Provost?
It's incredibly awful. It got me a little worried. I hate to think of something happening to you.
Same here.
It's odd, though. Danger. The thought of suddenly dying. In a weird way, it gets you sort of aroused, don't you think?
Bruce cocks an eyebrow at her. Everything gets her sort of aroused.
Internal armory a moment later.
Selina beams at the fantastic collection of armored gear and exotic weapons. She's like a kid in a toy shop.
Bruce, this is incredible. Malaysian?
Not bad. Sarawak warrior cast.
It's like everything in here is another little piece of your mind. I was right about you. Promise, okay? Promise you'll show me every inch of this place.
Page 87 missing from hard copy. Internal Batcave 15 minutes later.
Alfred is at a printer, scanning page after page of computer printout. He delivers his findings to Bruce, who's seated at a nearby terminal, scanning data and tapping away at the keyboard.
The police have no files whatsoever on Selina Kyle.
London, Cairo, Belgium.
What exactly are you?
Her credit card records. Every major art theft in the last 5 years. She's been on the scene, or close to it.
You mean she's some sort of collector? A cat burglar, or...
Could be. Museum curator, authenticator. She's got the perfect cover for it. What would she want with that stupid raven?
Raven, sir?
That's what the Catwoman took from Provost. A little raven statuette, about so big. But it couldn't have been that valuable.
He continues to scan the screen. Alfred is suddenly lost in thought.
How very odd. I'm sure it's nothing, but...
What, Alfred?
Your father had a raven, sir. A small statue of the very sort you describe. It used to sit on his desk.
This piques Bruce's interest. He swivels around in his chair and stares directly up at Alfred.
What happened to it?
After your father's demise, Mr. Tiptree came to the house and asked if he could have it as a keepsake. I saw no harm, but that was 30 years ago.
Wait a minute, Mr. Tiptree?
George Tiptree, your friend Elliot's father.
Cut to internal Tiptree's bedroom afternoon.
Tiptree has an oversized suitcase open on the bed. It's empty, except for balled up wads of newspaper which he is stuffing inside it. His head turns suddenly at the sound of a doorbell.
Internal upstairs hallway a moment later.
Tiptree emerges from his bedroom and peers over a banister into the entryway below. Standing there is an unexpected visitor, Bruce Wayne, holding his arms aloft while a battery of cops pat him down.
What are you looking for? Batarangs?
Bruce, come on up. I want to talk to Mr. Wayne alone.
The cops look suspiciously as Bruce ascends the stairs.
Internal Tiptree's library a moment later.
Tiptree lets Bruce inside and shuts the door behind him. Bruce hands him a gift box.
I brought you a Christmas present. Sorry about the wrapping. The police made me open it.
Tiptree opens the box and pulls out a diamond-studded tie clasp. He looks up at Bruce with an odd mixture of bewilderment and gratitude. Bruce nods for him to try it on, and he obliges.
I'm afraid I don't have anything for you.
I think you may have something that belonged to my father.
You know.
Stares at Bruce, astonished. His head sinks into his hand.
I'll be over tomorrow. One way or another, it'll all be over. I've decided, Bruce. I'm going to give him the last 2 ravens. He's already got the others.
What are you talking about? Who?
Batman. I don't know how he found out, but...
Tiptree reaches for the bottle on his desk to pour himself a drink, but Bruce angrily knocks the glass out of his hand.
It's time you told me what's going on here.
Didn't you ever wonder where it all came from, Bruce? All the privilege, all the power, all the money. The ravens are a kind of map, Bruce. The key to an incredibly vast fortune.
Whose fortune?
Gotham City's.
We flash back to Gotham in the past. The cobblestone streets of 19th century Gotham. A massive explosion blows open one wall of a municipal building and total chaos erupts. Fire starting, bystanders screaming, police rushing to the scene.
Back in 1880, the Gotham City Treasury was looted. It was a fantastic operation. Perfect military precision. The robbers made off with millions in gold and silver bullion.
A horse-drawn car, weighted down with gold bricks, careens around a corner. Atop of it are 2 men in masks, firing a Gatling gun into the crowd. Police and onlookers tumble to the pavement, shot dead, as another car emerges from the wreckage of the Treasury and takes off in the opposite direction. Continuing in flashback, city officials in a boardroom trading papers back and forth, arguing furiously with 5 calm, distinguished-looking gents, one of whom is a bushy-bearded Civil War hero, General Oliver Wayne.
The city was going under, bankrupt, until 5 rich men stepped in to bail it out. In exchange, they took the land rights, the mineral rights, the service contract.
Back to scene on Bruce and Tiptree.
The 5 families.
Our ancestors. They bought Gotham City, carved it up and ran it into the ground. In 5 years, they were rich beyond imagining. We've just been following in their footsteps, and in all this time, no one's ever suspected.
They were the ones behind the robbery.
More flashback footage. The 5 patriarchs are in front of a roaring fireplace at Wayne Manor, raising a celebratory toast. On the table nearby are 5 raven statuettes.
They had 5 ravens made, 5 ravens which, when combined, would reveal the location of the treasure they had stolen. But they never touched it. They never needed to. It's still there to this day.
Back to scene on Bruce and Tiptree.
The ravens and the secret have been passed down through generations, father to son. Your father, he died before he could tell you.
So they stole his piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I've got it, Bruce, and I'm going to hand it over. He's right. You know, we've all been feeding on the soul of Gotham.
Bruce stares at him, stony-faced. There's one part of the story that doesn't quite add up.
No, I don't believe you, Elliot. My father was a decent man, an honorable man. He would never have taken part in a scheme like this.
It wasn't his doing, Bruce. It was...
That doesn't matter. If he knew that his fortune was based on a crime against the city, reputation or not, he would have tried to...
Christ, Bruce, do you want me to spell it out for you?
Bruce backs off. An awful shiver of anticipation runs down his spine.
He was a decent man. He was an honourable man. That's why they had him killed.
Camera zeroes in on Bruce's horrified face as we get a series of shots.
Quick, almost subliminal glimpses of Bruce's primal trauma. A mugger snatching at his mother's necklace. Thomas Wayne lunging at him. The young Jack Napier firing at Thomas. Pearl showering down on a rain-drenched sidewalk. A second bullet felling his mother and finally young Bruce himself, face wrecked with pain and grief. An expression which perfectly matches the one which the adult Bruce is wearing as he relives it all 30 years later. Staggered and glassy-eyed, he stares off into the space as Tiptree finishes his tale.
They killed him to protect their secret. And now the bills come due.
Cut to external Wayne Manor establishing toward dusk.
The wrought iron gate outside Bruce's vast estate and beyond it. Wayne Manor itself rising bold and stately against the setting sun. A county sheriff's car cruises past.
Internal Wayne Manor, Bruce's bedroom that moment.
Bruce lies motionless in his bed. Scattered about him are scrapbooks, family photos, and yellowed newspaper clippings which describe the murder of his parents. Disoriented, he gazes about aimlessly at his familiar surroundings, which no longer seem quite so familiar. He folds his arms formally across his chest and stares up at the ceiling, inert, as if the very weight of his heritage is crushing him down. Somewhere, a phone rings. He makes no move to answer it.
Internal Wayne Manor kitchen dusk.
Vicky's at the kitchen table drinking coffee. Alfred, who's in his apron preparing dinner, picks up the ringing phone.
Thank you. Yes, everything is fine. I shall expect your next call in an hour. The police are becoming an awful nuisance.
I feel so awful for him, Alfred. There must be something we can do.
I realized long ago that there are places in Mr. Wayne's heart which no one will ever penetrate or share. He loves you, Miss Vale, but in certain ways he will always be alone.
Thanks for the testimonial.
Alfred turns and sees Bruce standing in the doorway, staring at him. He starts to say something, but thinks better of it. He returns to his dinner preparations as Bruce sits down across from Vicky. She extends a hand, and he takes it, making a visible effort to hold himself together.
Tiptree's planning some kind of rendezvous with Batman. I think Batman ought to be there when it happens.
I see, sir. When shall we expect you back?
Get your cap. You are driving.
Internal Tiptree's brownstone night.
It's late, and the house is dark as Tiptree treads silently downstairs, carrying an oversized suitcase. The lights are on in the kitchen, where the cops are playing poker and watching TV.
Internal parlor a moment later night.
Christmas tree lights twinkle in the darkness. Tiptree kneels beside the tree and digs around among the packages. He pulls out an oblong box with a gift card addressed to Daddy from Santa. With a glance back at the kitchen, he soundlessly unwraps the package and opens it to reveal a matched set of raven statuettes. He transfers them to a big suitcase, then slinks into the hallway.
Internal bedroom across street that moment night.
The two stakeout cops are chuckling at a Charlie Brown Christmas special on a portable TV. One of them glances out the window and sees a man in a topcoat emerging from the brownstone, suitcase in hand.
Shit! That's Tiptree!
The cop grabs for his walkie-talkie.
External street outside Brownstone that moment night.
Tiptree is halfway down the block when two cops burst out of the brownstone. Mr. Tiptree, where the hell are you? Headlights flash on as a surveillance car revs its engine. Tiptree breaks into a run and the cops from the brownstone follow suit. At the end of the block, he vanishes down a subway entrance.
Internal subway station that moment.
A violinist is panhandling outside the token booth as the cops come racing down the stairs. The cops trip over his violin case, scattering small change across the concrete floor. They flash their badges at the booth and vault over the turnstile just in time to see Tiptree, with the suitcase, scuttling down the stairway which leads to the train platform below.
Internal subway platform a moment later.
Tiptree steps onto an express train. The doors slide shut behind him, and the hapless cops curse under their breath as he rolls off. We gotta get back to the radio.
Internal subway car a moment later moving.
Tiptree takes an open seat and looks around apprehensively. Being famously rich, he's ridden the subway twice in his life, and at this time of night, every face in the sparsely populated car looks vaguely menacing. Derelicts, prostitutes, teen gang members, all of them eye a well-heeled stranger with intense curiosity as he clutches his suitcase and stares anxiously at the floor. An odd, gaunt figure enters at the end of the car. It's a deaf-mute. He shambles down the aisle, passing out little white cards. One side is a guide to international sign language. The other reads, Deaf and Dumb, please help, $1. Two young toughs take a card and tear it in half, chuckling, shining the deaf-mute on. A hooker, the heart of gold type, stuffs a buck into his tin cup. He reaches Tiptree and extends a card. Tiptree ignores him, refusing to make eye contact, but the deaf-mute shoves the card instantly in his face. Now Tiptree looks up. This card bears a personalized message. Gotham Central Station, B train west to Riverview. Tiptree's eyes widen. The deaf-mute, who is in fact Frick, glowers down and holds out his cup. Tiptree digs in his pocket. The smallest bill he's got is a 20, but he hands it over anyway. Smiling at his act of generosity, Frick moves on to the next card. Tiptree stares down tremulously at the card. He fidgets with his tie clasp, the one that Bruce gave him earlier.
Internal limo moving night.
Tight on a handheld electronic tracing device, a small blip moves across a shifting grid, not unlike a radar screen. Bruce is in the back of the limo, eyeing up the tracer intently. Alfred's up front at the wheel.
According to this, he's directly below us.
The subway, sir?
Yeah. Take a right.
Internal Gotham Central Station that moment.
It's slightly more crowded here in the hub of Gotham. Tiptree emerges onto the platform and spies a squad of transit cops 30 or 40 feet away, speaking into their walkie-talkies as they scan the crowd. Sticking close to the tracks, he turns swiftly towards the nearest stairway, blending in with the crowd, trying to hold his suitcase out of view.
Internal lower platform a minute later.
Tiptree is running for the B train. Just as the doors begin to close, he manages to thrust the suitcase inside, but the door slides shut on his hand, and he drops it. He stands there on the platform, his face turning bone white as the train lurches forward. False alarm, the train stops, and the doors hiss open again.
Internal subway car moving a moment later.
Tiptree clambers aboard with a severe case of palpitations. As the train pulls out, a couple of rough-looking but helpful street types show him to his seat and hand him his precious suitcase. He sits there panting. Moments later, a deaf-mute enters the card. Tiptree does a take. It's the exact same guy who was riding the other line. Of course, he doesn't know about Frick's malignant twin Frack.
Wipe 2. Internal local stop 10 minutes later night.
Having changed trains twice more since we left him, Tiptree debarks at a local deserted shop. The station is empty except for one other passenger, who's gotten off here as well, a woman in a long fur coat. Tiptree watches as she approaches on her way to the stairwell, stiletto heels clicking across the floor. There's something familiar about her, but she's wearing a big, broad-rimmed hat, and she tilts it down as she passes, obscuring her face. It is, of course, Selina. Tiptree stands there expectantly with his suitcase, awaiting further instructions. They aren't long in coming. A black minor bird swoops out of the tunnel, lands on the platform, and struts in front of him.
Follow me. Follow me.
The bird flutters its wings and takes off again down the tunnel. Tiptree stares in disbelief. Then the bird caws again in a shrill voice echoing through the darkness of the tunnel.
Follow me.
Tiptree clambers over the edge of the platform, dropping awkwardly to the tracks below. Suitcase in hand, he begins to walk.
Internal limo moving night.
Alfred is tearing up the streets as Bruce consults the tracer.
He slowed down. Looks like he's under the park.
How do you propose to get down there, sir? We can't exactly have Batman strolling up to buy a token, now can we?
I know another way in. Step on it. They're down there waiting for him.
Alfred turns the limo hard right into Gotham Park, past the statue of General Wayne atop his horse.